Hi everyone. How's it going? Okay, we got a few people. We're gonna start, you know, relatively on time, but as people kind of sprinkle in here, I hope we can catch them up. We've got a special um round of guests today. Uh I'm so used to just oh, and we have a former guest in the audience. Maybe two. Former guest and future guest come in the audience. Wow, look at that. Hi everyone. Welcome to our monthly webinar series, special edition roundtable version. Okay, we have uh a whole a varied selection of animal health professionals, tech professionals, all hoping to engage you, the audience here today, in a discussion around using AI in vet med. And we really want to get everyone as engaged as possible in this conversation because it's one that you're going to start hearing a lot more of going forward. And I just want to introduce myself, Shahir, who's there, who are all in the audience as well. We all are representing Celeritas Digital. We put these on every month. Um, and Celeritas is a tech company who builds software for animal health companies, for veterinary clinics. We offer a variety of solutions from practice management systems and software to queuing solutions. And we're also in the process of rolling out a special new project called Tailblazer AI. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that or allowed to say it, but who cares? I just did. So that's going to be a thing we find out about soon. I'm excited about that. I hope our very special and esteemed guests can share some exciting new stuff with us today too. So I want to give a brief introduction to them. I always say no one can introduce themselves better than themselves. Um, so I want to make a quick attempt. I know we have Lisa Began here who we couldn't have put this together without. She rallied the troops. Lisa, great to have you.
Thank you. Great to
Um,
be here.
and Lisa is a veterinarian, co-founder of Your Vet Box, who I'm sure we will be talking a little bit more about in a bit. But from the Your Vet Box team, we also have Katie Ike. Thank you for joining, Katie.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
And we also are joined by veterinarian Dell Williams, Dr. Dell Williams. It's great to have you here.
Hi, it's afternoon here for me. Nice to see you. I am a vet and an AI expert in the industry. I've built some AI tools for clinic use, and I advise on ethical and responsible adoption of AI in veterinary practices.
Awesome. And thank you so much for joining. From the we've got some people representing the Mind Grub team, which is a company you guys are gonna want to look into. By the way, I'm gonna put all of this in the chat later. I'm gonna put some links in the chat later, everyone, so you can stay connected with our awesome guests. But we have two folks from Mind Grub, one of them being a surprise guest we didn't know was coming today. So first off, we have Todd Marks, who is the CEO at Mind Grub. Welcome, Todd Marks.
Thanks for having me, Daniel. Todd Marks, nice to meet everybody out there. I'm the CEO and founder of Mind Grub. We make and market software for clients. We work with a lot of startups as well as enterprise brands. So we've partnered with Your Vet Box. They have some interesting AI software they're working on, and we're happy to be here. And I did bring Mo as a surprise guest. Mind Grub's always been focused on the end user experience. We started out as a lot of teachers now 20 years ago. We're a few hundred team members now, and we make software in a number of industries. But we're happy to be here. I'm really focusing on the healthcare space today. And I'm happy to introduce our new director of AI, who, as much as we've been focused on the end user experience, he's very much our now kind of resident scientist around the underlying technologies of AI. So I'm very happy to have Mo on our team. Mo, if you could, say a couple words.
Yeah, great. Thank you for the introduction, Todd. My name is Mo Ezderman. I'm leading the AI initiative here at MindGrab. My background is the last 7 years building AI systems, in the last 3 years building more of agentic AI systems, and really, really passionate about AI. That's why I'm really excited about the discussion today here. And yeah, great to be here. Thank you.
All right. Well, awesome. We're off to a running start. I am so happy everyone could join us, audience and roundtable guests alike. I know Katie will be largely running this conversation, so I want to kind of pass the mic to her. Katie, if you're ready to get started,
I'm ready.
let's go. Is everyone in the audience ready? Are we excited? I also want to make it clear, there's no need to be shy if you are in this audience right now. We're all friends now. So if there's anything that sticks out to you throughout, if anything inspires you, if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute or type in the chat. Or yeah, that we're hoping this is as interactive as possible. So just wanted to put that out there. But without further ado, Katie.
Thank you. So we thought this morning would be kind of interesting just to throw out some questions. It's such a new space, and especially in the veterinary world, everybody, wants to make their lives more efficient, easier, and using AI tools can help with that. And so I just sort of came up with a list of questions for our panelists here. But of course, if anybody has any questions, you can throw it in the chat, raise your hand, whatever. Daniel, if you can help me watch for those, that'd be great. But we want it to be more of kind of a free form conversation. These questions are just sort of starters. So I'm going to start with just very generally for Mo. Can you just introduce us as a sort of, for anyone in the audience that's not familiar with the terminology that is used in sort of the AI world, like large language models, predictive versus generative AI, those kind of things, if you can just kind of give us an overview of some of the common terms that we might start seeing?
Sure. One thing to understand that AI is not a new thing. I know like AI's come really hype in the last 2-3 years, but AI started actually in the 50s. And this type of AI we're calling today narrow AI, and that's kind of still exists today and it's still like effective. But this type of AI, it's very specific. It's training on specific type of problem. It's very hard also to train those kind of models. Those are the neural network and things like that. Then 2020, we start developing what we call generative AI, and that's like included the LLM lingos and large language model and things like that. And those type of models, they actually build on the same type of technology as the narrow AI. We just give them a lot of data to train on, a lot of data that it costs around $100 million to train those kind of models. So only like few type of company can actually create those models. And those type of models, as they sound, they generative models. So I'm putting an input into the models, and the model is going to generate an output for us. And the output could be like in 3 formats, could be like text to text, text to image, text to video, and three kind of different type of modality. And those are the technology that's kind of like why the hype is started today, because those technology unlock new type of capability, which we call it agentic systems. So now we can build agentic systems that can do a lot of the tasks that human used to do. So the important part is like 2 different type of AI and generative AI, and I think that's what we all kind of excited about. That's helpful.
Great. Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you so much. Anybody else have any like common terminology that they think is common that we might not out here as, veterinarians?
I think one thing that I've noted from training sessions I've done with veterinarians is I often ask people what terms they've heard of. And most people have heard of ChatGPT. But then when I put up LLM, a lot of people haven't heard of that. And actually, ChatGPT is an LLM, a large language model. So there is some confusing terminology in the same way that as a veterinary student, you might not understand the difference between a trade name and the generic name. We have that with the AI as well. So there's an awful lot of acronyms and things to take on board. And I think just learning a little bit at a time is really helpful.
Perfect.
Absolutely. I definitely feel like as a veterinarian, you know, it's been a big learning curve to understand the terminology in this space. And I think, you know, listening to all of you is really helpful, you know, to get some more information for all of us.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's LLMs, large language models, which these are the major generative content kind of engines that we have now. But then you hear of ChatGPT, which is one of them. That happens, the underlying technology is OpenAI. But there's Claude on the Google side, right? Microsoft has Copilot. So there's a number of different brands on top of these technologies. And but it all just seems like technical lingo, much like, you know, pharmaceuticals. I wouldn't know the generic from the branded version, you know, unless we all call it ibuprofen or something, you know, the generic, you know.
Advil.
Yeah, exactly. Like Advil, it's a brand, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Is it Advil or is it ibuprofen? I don't know. I don't know. ChatGPT or OpenAI.
There's also confusion because GPT, sorry, has different models which have very confusing names. So they started with sort of numerical iterations, 1, 2, 3, 2 point something, 3 point something, and then they also then added in IO and deep research and things like that. So there's lots of different types of model belonging to the same sort of giant model, and they don't necessarily follow any rhyme or reason, and so it's quite difficult to sort of just keep on top of all the names. It's really confusing.
Yeah, then on top of that, all the tool suite, right? Like you can go to a site like Hugging Face and it has thousands of different like one-off LLMs. Like with the ChatGPT, they had like 3.0 was the first time we really heard about it. It was at that 3.0 stage. Then they released a 3.5. Now they're at 4.0. They have 4.0 Pro, as you mentioned, deep research. And these are all additional copies of their LLM, basically fine-tuned to do a very specific thing. And like, you know, deep research will come back with like market research, you know, it'll do analysis of documents and stuff. Like it's pretty fascinating how they've been able to refine it. You take that same engine, you can now also create images. So like OpenAI, which does deep research, also does DALL-E, which, you know, is moving in the direction of now creating videos. So you can do deep research and analysis and come up with charts and graphs, and you can pixel for pixel make animation, right? And it's because this algorithm is just so advanced and we're putting so much energy behind it that it basically is starting to do generative things that, you know, would have taken humans a long time. And that's the interesting thing in the industry is where are humans doing a lot of repetitive tasks, right? Because that's where we need to like free up the humans. It was the Industrial Revolution 160 years ago that really created this need to have humans doing repetitive tasks. It was basically factory line for production, which was physical. Now we do digital production, but we do it still with this factory line idea that I'm going to copy here and paste here, and that's what I do all day long. Right now, where the juice is worth the squeeze, that's where you'll want to look and figure out how do you digitize that and automate it so that it's not humans doing repetitive things. I think that's where AI can free us up to then do, you know, the higher and better use of our time, right? There's all those things you can't even get to, which is the real thinking work.
Right.
So I want to add maybe one thing, like Adele, you mentioned something that I think maybe going to be helpful for the audience here, because we start seeing like different kind of models. You mentioned like there's a series of number and then there's the old models. And there is difference between those two models. I think the difference is that the O series, and now we're seeing like other companies doing the same thing, like deep research, it's what we call chain of thoughts model. So those models, it's basically the baseline is the same GPT, it just is going to, it's kind of like an agent. It's taking time and he's thinking about the problem. And sometimes it's taking like 40 seconds to get an answer. Something could take an hour. And this is like very relevant maybe for this industry, because when you want to do research and you want to do like scientific research, that those type of models are going to play like crucial roles in research industry.
It's all very exciting, especially for those of us in the industry that are already stretched thin, to have, tools that are going to help us be more efficient in our day-to-day lives. So that I'm going to switch a little bit into going back to how we're using AI tools. AI, I know, is like a kind of catch-all, but how we're using these tools in our practices today. And so I thought maybe Adele and Lisa might be able to bounce back and forth a little bit about some of the products that are out there, like the radiology products, some of the scribe products. Talk about how they're being used and maybe some of the pitfalls that you have to watch out for. How do you screen a good AI tool? What conversations do you need to have with the companies that are launching these tools? So I'll let y'all kind of maybe bounce back and forth.
Thank you very much. That was a massive open-ended question with about 100 points in it. Yeah, so really common places that the AI tools are already in use in veterinary medicine are for things like helping with diagnosis, towards diagnosis when there's an image. So in cytology and in radiology is really good examples, because there's an image and then we use what are called computer vision models or CV models to analyze the image and look for patterns, and it's pattern recognition in the image. So with cytology, rather than you having to do the cell counts manually yourself, there's now machines that can do it and that can recognize the different cell types. When personally, my knowledge of different types of cells is limited, and I would have to be, checking with somebody else. So if I've got a tool that can help me do that, great, fantastic. I suppose the danger is, what if the tool is wrong and I'm just not knowing, and I am presuming that there's a correct output there when there could be an error in the output, and I suppose that's the danger. The same if I'm not very confident at reading a radiograph
If I could jump in there, but what we found as scientists is that we call it cobotics. So with the AI and you're working as a team. So they have found that humans make mistakes and AI makes mistakes, but together they can catch each other's mistakes that much better. So like humans go, do that first image and then just send it through the AI to catch things that the human might have missed, and it happens, right? But at least the human has a little bit more strategic thinking to try to, figure out. But the mundane cases that they just miss because they worked a double and they're exhausted, right? Then the AI can catch that as well. The AI, if it's really obvious, it's obvious. But in those 20% use cases, AI isn't that strategic thinker. And so kick it to the humans. And so now the humans only have to really, dig into 20%. Other than just seeing them all broad brush initially. So it's really that cobotics that's really important. Sorry, please go ahead. We're looking at that industry, and we're advocates for AI, and there's trust is the biggest issue, right? So
I think of it as like, when I'm using my diagnostics, right? I'm sending my information to the lab and I'm getting information back about a patient. There are times, I think all of us as veterinarians can think about times that we've gotten something back that just makes no sense, right? We look at it and we say, well, I don't understand how we got this value, or this doesn't make sense for the patient that I saw. And if we just took it for face value, then we probably would not be doing a service to that patient. And so AI, in my opinion, is the same. If you just take everything for face value and you don't use your critical reasoning skills as a practitioner, you're going to find times that you're choosing something that may not be correct. And so, that's true of anything that we use as a practitioner, especially in the early stages of things. It's always important. Use the knowledge that you have. And if it doesn't make sense to you, make sure that we iterate and figure out, why it doesn't, or change things. I use scribes every day in my practice currently. And, with that, there are times when it'll, spell something wrong. I've had times when it's taken a totally different diagnosis and put it in for the next one, things that just don't make sense. And, if I just pushed it through without ever, vetting it, then I certainly would be sending things to clients that wouldn't be correct. And I think as practitioners, we just need to remember that we're still important. And, when you get to the point where people are saying, oh, it's gonna replace us, I don't think it ever will replace us, because, like Todd said, and Del said, we have to still be practitioners and use this as a tool, just like we use diagnostic labs and things like that as a tool.
Yeah, and that brings me to another question that was on my list was, how do we know it won't replace us? And I think y'all just really summed that up very well. And I've seen this also in my own practice where you just have to remind everybody that's using these tools that it is a tool. It's like your stethoscope, right? I'm going to listen with my stethoscope. That's a tool. Or like Lisa said, diagnostic, lab results. That's a tool that we use. We have to interpret it and use what they give us, but also interpret that ourselves. So it's, my worry sometimes is that we will start to use this as a crutch. And like Adele said, just, hey, this is what the machine said, so I'm going to believe it and not trust our own eyes and our ears. So that was just one more kind of question on my list. So
I want maybe to offer like some like technical explanation why it's not going to replace human. As I think, like people think there's some reasoning, strong reasonings, there's some consciousness around those AI tools that understand everything. And the reality is it's probability machine. It's all can do is just predicting the next world depend on the set of probabilities, like what world is going to choose. So it's just gambling. You're gonna get they most cases they're right, but sometimes they're wrong with choosing the world, and that's where we get the hallucination, and that's where we need the human in the loop. So I think until we're finding new technology beyond what we have today, like the transformers, that everything based on it, we still need human because AI is never going to be perfect. It's going to be really expensive to have AI perfect. Go ahead, Tom.
I think I found something out recently. I think ultimately AI, no matter what, will try to give you an answer. So like if you're like, hey, what's the best restaurant down the block and stuff, and maybe there's no restaurant down the block, it'll just always try to find the best answer. And then we as humans created a lot of like capturing all the edge cases. And anytime it says like, I'm sorry, I cannot answer that question, it's really because we're like, it might have been, maybe an unethical question or something, but we've created all these guardrails on when it won't respond as far as like what you see in ChatGPT. So I thought it was, I thought it was funny that ultimately AI is a predictive machine. It always tries to give you an answer. And then hallucinations are really just, it's always trying to give you an answer. We just haven't put a response to say, oop, we know we're not going to be accurate here for whatever reason, so we won't give you an answer. That's why you got to like, now all my searches, I know if it's something that just should be known on the internet, or should be known in the software that I'm writing and in its knowledge repo, then that 80% use case, it's really accurate. That 20% use case where you're like, oh, do you really know this or not? That's where you as an end user have to rely on it, take it for a grain of salt, as they say.
I think
Right.
the human in the loop thing is really important as well when we think about litigation and ultimate responsibility of case, and that's another important reason why there should always be a vet involved in the case, because somebody takes responsibility for that case ultimately, and it's their professional right to practice that's on the line if they get things wrong, and that's why they have to be responsible for interpreting the AI tool outputs. And there's no regulation of AI tools in veterinary medicine, but there's no regulation of any diagnostic tools in veterinary medicine really, and so it already falls on us to be making those decisions, as Lisa said, and I think that's just really important to remember.
So that brings me to a really good question. We just saw that there is a bill, and Lisa, you may have to jump in here and tell me where, that they are trying to make AI a licensed practitioner. Is this a good idea or a bad idea?
Yeah, I saw. So this is in the medical domain, and I saw it yesterday or the day before, and it's a US based
Right.
thing, and sort of fits nicely with a lot of people losing their jobs fairly recently as well. And maybe there's the thought that AI is just going to be a suitable replacement. A big question there is who would then be liable for an erroneous decision, and I think that's probably why it's not practical or realistic for that to become a thing. But I don't know much more about it than that. And I'd welcome it.
Actually, what we've seen in the industry is in nearly every state, the #1 job opening is nurses. And if you think about like Mo started with kind of a narrow focus on AI, there are some things like taking your blood pressure, right? Like you put a cuff on, you take the blood pressure and you analyze, like, is it within bounds, or, are they having a heart attack or whatever, right? And so very narrow things that AI can do. And like any clinical trial, if it's highly accurate over a longitudinal study, then like, absolutely, it does blood pressure. Yep, that's what it does. You sit in the chair and the bot takes over, he talks to you, and like, right? And so it can do those things, but it's going to start out very narrowly. It's the stuff that like is repetitive tasks for humans that there's not a lot of, cause for concern, with how inaccurate it may be and how, detrimental that might be to a patient.
Yeah, like if you're taking like any industry, I'm not familiar with the vet industry, but a lot of the industry, right, is like the roles, I call them triage roles, right? They receive information, analyze it a little bit, and just like forward the information to other people. I think those kind of roles probably, maybe that's what they call a practitioner, like people just like take information and they just like forward the information to other people. Maybe some of the information they actually solve on their own. That's what we see, but with agentic AI, that's what they do. But I don't think the expert roles, because the expert roles gonna have to validate the AI that actually, and they need to examine the patient also. So definitely like we're going to see, and I think we start seeing impact on jobs, but right now I see it like maybe at the junior level or the triage kind of jobs that's going to impact first.
So Mo, you bring up a good point about triage, and I think this is a good point for us to talk about a little bit about what Katie and I have been working on at your VetBox with MindGrub. We are working on a triage tool for CSRs in veterinary clinics. And as Mo said, it gives us those repetitive options, takes out, chances of missing information. We've seen a lot of, as veterinarians, I know, all of us can say, how many times have you looked on your calendar, on your book for, next week, and you see that pet that might be a male cat that is having trouble urinating and it's on for next week. And you think to yourself, oh my God, that cat is not going to be here next week. So Katie and I have been, spending long hours for the last year working with MindGrub on creating a triage tool for veterinary clinics to help make sure things like that don't happen, and to just make things more consistent across CSRs, and give veterinary clinics information about their, the owners and the pets and what people are calling in for. So we're pretty excited about what our offering is going to be able to do, and stay tuned. It should be really soon.
I think
Yeah,
that, sorry.
Go ahead, Adele. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think the important thing about triage tools is that they have guardrails on and safety measures, and they always err towards caution. So ones that have been designed by vets will probably have a tendency to have that kind of caution built into them, which makes them a nice use case, and probably will engage with more clients. So we might actually catch more clients and prevent more pet deaths by having a triage tool rather than just having a phone line. I think that's an important sort of use case for AI as well, is helping us to engage with our clients.
Yeah, we just saw I think it was veterinary management groups that put out a statement that we veterinarians are the third touch point for people these days. First, they go to Google, which we know there's a lot of misinformation out on Google. Second, they go to a more of a live or online teletriage. Sometimes that's live people that maybe are not veterinarians, that might be like a licensed technician that still don't understand everything about veterinary medicine. And then the veterinarian is actually the third or the fourth touch point. And so it's one of the reasons why Lisa and I have been building what we're building, is to have an accurate tool for people that either, don't have access to a vet, don't have a relationship to a vet, live in places where there's a vet desert, those kind of things. And so, yes, it has a lot of guardrails in it, because it's from our experience, together we have more than 50 years of clinical experience. So we built it with all of that in mind, with those guardrails in mind. So thank you for bringing that up. Lisa, you want anything else about that?
I think right now there are triage tools out there that are live agents. And we're finding that being able to utilize our veterinary knowledge in our agent allows us to have a lot more robust information because of the knowledge that we have. So, we're pretty excited about that. I've been using AI tools in my practice for, the last couple years. And certainly I've found that there are some great efficiencies that I've gotten to be able to get some hours back in my day. And, I'm hoping that the same thing will happen. I mean, as a veterinarian, we all know it's really hard to find staff. And then, we're always training staff, especially our front end staff. And so, we're really hopeful that, we'll be helping with those things as well, finding people that will then, have some training from using our triage.
Exactly. It's funny. It just made me think about, when we transitioned from handwritten notes to computers, and then from computers having a server in your hospital to the cloud. And I remember when I went from like completely paperless, I opened a practice in Roanoke, Virginia, and was completely paperless. And I remember people going, "Oh my God, you're going to lose your records. What are you going to do?" Nothing ever happened. So it's kind of like, I still hear people that are sort of nervous about where we're headed with all of these tools. But to me, it's really exciting. But it kind of reminds me of those kind of older days where, anytime you change something like that, it's like people kind of grasp on, but it's kind of cool. So Todd, I know that you've been in doing a lot with human medicine and some of these tools. Can you touch on some of the things that you've learned from being in some of those conferences and roundtables?
Yeah, absolutely. So certainly everything that nurses are doing, or kind of frontline staff working with the patients, whether it's, on onboarding patients or whether it's, outpatient care, we just find there's a lot of tasks that are, highly repetitive and, kind of largely administrative. And so those are the things that I think, because we don't have enough humans to go around and, fill all the gaps from, any kind of frontline staff position, from RNs and LNs or LPs. So I think AI is going to be a tool that just starts helping automate a lot of that digital information, which I think we would all welcome, frankly, because people are very much overworked in medical fields. And the nice thing about, in talking in healthcare about vets is that it'll come because it probably needs to, but there's a lot of regulation in the, medical industry between, HIPAA laws as far as datas and privacy, with PII around HIPAA, or it's, getting FDA approval of, treatments, right? Some of that is not in veterinary science or veterinary practice. So I think you're going to be on the forefront of actually how you adopt AI is going to then be the rest of the medical industry will start to look at what you're doing, because you can get a little more bold when it comes to, diagnostic, right? I would still caution and say humans should always work with AI and not just let it, it'll be wonderful. They actually have, it's a funny video, it's called Do Nothing University, that it's for like a candy bar commercial, but it shows people just, AI getting to the point where they just hit the accept button. They're like, accept, and then they're like, learn how to do nothing, and you're on the beach like, accept. But obviously humans do need to like review the results, right? Because we're ultimately responsible. That's, when it comes down to responsibility and the humanity of it all, we still need to be responsible for that.
Right, exactly. And Adele, I think you do a lot of work with ethics and regulation. Is there anything that you can add kind of to that? And are you at all involved in the human side, or are you mostly in the veterinary side?
I'm watching the human side carefully, and obviously things are slightly different this side of the pond. I'm in the UK, which used to be part of Europe, and still we have some of the shared regulations, but slightly different. I think that the point that you came to before, that AI is exciting, and I am definitely an AI advocate, but there's also there's caution to be had with AI as well, and not just in terms of clinical decision making, but also things like using the scribes and stuff. If there's an LLM behind the scribe that's making suggested diagnoses, and that goes into your clinical records, then they're taken as your word, later on. So you need to make sure that you agree with what's in there. And then, the whole thing around data privacy and what's happening to people now in the UK, we have a responsibility to personal data that belongs to a human. We have the GDPR laws. I think you have similar PPI laws over there. And if you're using a scribing software, for example, and you're giving a person's information and their address and stuff, and that's then being used by the LLM that's behind the scribing software, that would be a breach of GDPR in the UK, certainly, because you are technically processing somebody's personal information if you're sharing it with a third party. And so I think there's the sort of legalities there, but there's also the professional responsibility as vets. GDPR doesn't cover animal data at all, but as a vet you still have a professional data to your client to protect that pet's data. We a practicing vet in the UK would be at risk of being struck off from the register if they were giving out pets information without the client's consent. So I think that needs to be really clear as well. And if we are using AI tools in practice, we need to make sure that clients are aware of that and that they have consented in some way to that. I work with practices to actually make an AI policy on what their policy is towards vets using AI and the practice using AI in general, and sort of some guardrails to think about, things to check when they're adopting AI into the practice. So having a look at the terms and conditions and the data policy and the privacy policy, making sure that they're compliant with the law in the region. And also making sure that everybody in the practice has training on how to use it appropriately as well. And to instigate review of that over time as well, and make sure that everybody is on board and using it properly and safely as well.
Sarah in the chat said that, this all reminds her of when she was doing her CBCs and ran it through a machine and she would recheck things. And that just brings me to think, like, how are you currently using AI in your practices? Is anybody else willing to share what you guys are doing currently? And, if you've heard of anything that we haven't mentioned?
And how you're double checking, if you are, how you're sort of training your staff to double check those results that you get from your tools.
So I'll go again. I'm not in practice most of the time, although I do occasionally dip into locum work. I did some locum work as an equine ambulatory vet last weekend, and I used Covet, which is a transcribing software. It had a neat function, which was it had an offline mode. So while I was driving between calls on yards in the countryside where there's no signal, I was still able to verbally record my notes, and then when I got back to where I had Wi-Fi signal, it did beautiful transcription into lovely neat notes. So I wasn't spending extra time on my busy weekend on call doing that. I've already mentioned the sort of diagnostic tools. I think one thing to realize as veterinary practice owners is that there are a lot of vets that are experimenting with large language models, for example, or with transcribing software and things and I'm terming that bring your own AI, BYO AI, where they're bringing it and using it in the practice without necessarily the practice knowing. And one thing I always encourage practice leaders to think about is how do you feel about that? That there's potentially leaks of practice data, of client data, of animal data going on sort of in the consult room behind a shut door that nobody's aware of, and having that in policies as well to make sure that that's really thought of as a sort of safety net for protecting the vets as well, because a lot of people, general vets, just sort of look at the large language models like ChatGPT and think of it like an advanced Google search and are using it like that, and don't necessarily realize that the dangers of hallucination and it making things up, and the data being shared for what purposes we're not sure. And so I think there's a lot to be said for sort of raising awareness of how they work and what the limitations are, as well as the pros. And the
Dr.
hallucination.
Williams, dude, that's actually a really, really good point. The IT department that sets up your access to the internet and your firewalls, ideally, I think in healthcare, you have to shut down any use of third-party AI, and then you have to walk onto your platform the specific things you want them to be able to do. You can give access to things like ChatGPTs, but you need to firewall it and make sure that they can't put like personal identifiable information in there. And so you almost have to screen what they're then asking and what they can get back, because ultimately you raise a really good point. If it is BYOAI, I hadn't heard that before, but there ultimately you're going to have data leaks, right? I think, it is a big concern.
Yeah. Well, I think that the danger is you can put a firewall on a practice computer, but what if somebody's using it on their roaming on their phone? Like, there's still that danger. And so I think it's important that staff are trained to know that would be, an offence that would be sackable if somebody was using it, against company policy. And I think companies need to think a lot more carefully about their approach to AI and what their staff are doing with it. I think there's loads of great use cases we haven't really spoken about, sort of client engagement, getting information out of the data as well. So AI generally is really useful for two things. One, automating tasks that are repetitive, and things like doing inventory. Who wants to stand there for a whole day counting pills and looking at which stock is going out of date and which stock that we've actually got a load of and we need to get rid of? And that would be a great use case for AI. So sort of automating tasks which are repetitive and easing the burden on that front, I think is a great use of AI. The other use of AI is getting insights out of data, and I think that is where we're slightly missing a trick in veterinary medicine. And there's a lot more that we could be doing to get insights out of the data, both the clinical data and the running of veterinary businesses. And there's so much information that we could be making better use of to make practices run better, to do scheduling better, to get better engagement with clients, to sort of hyper personalize the way that we speak to clients about their pets, because we could be teasing about that data a lot more than we do.
And that's like exactly like the idea of agentic AI, because like as we're using LLM, we're just using LLM, but I think the real value, can we use proprietary data from our business and use large language model to enhance and provide better insight? And that's exactly what agentic AI is using the LLM as the reasoning engine, but I have tools to go into internal systems, grab data, and augment it with large language model to get a better answer. And that's exactly what agentic AI come to solve.
Mo, since you're speaking, can you help us as like practitioners is there anything that we could look for? We're not experts in AI. We see these tools come out and they're these amazing, it's going to make your life where you don't have to work, where you can just go accept, right? Can you help us to understand what are the things that we should be looking for when we are evaluating potential tools to bring into our practices?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think like the best advice I can give to people, and I get asked that a lot, is really get your hands on generative AI technology. It could be OpenAI and cloud, and try to do everything that you could, that you're able to do, obviously privacy and everything, but like for personal reason, or maybe if you're a job, if you can do it, everything to do it with generative AI. You're going to be surprised by the use cases that you can do. And that's also going to give you ideas of the things that you can actually implement in your practice. Because behind those agentic AI, what it is, it's reasoning agent, just like ChatGPT, but I can give it Excel sheet, I can give it images, I can give it videos, I can generate all those things. So my advice would be playing with it. I think like someone give like suggestion, if you play with it for 30 days straight, you become like a really, I wouldn't say expert, but you're in a good spot to kind of understand how things work. So I think all the other toolings, that third party provide, they're great, but they kind of mask what you really can do. So using a lot of generative AIs, OpenAI Cloud, and images and videos, that would be like my advice. Another thing is like following the industry. And I know there is a lot of noise, and that's really hard to know what's actually real, what's not. But I would suggest to kind of following at least the leader of the industry, which Microsoft, OpenAI, and Google. see what their leader is saying, but also at the same time filter the noise from them, because a lot of the news that coming from them, they want to hype the AI for investors, and raising money. So get the information with them because they have something that we don't know about the future. So I think if you're combining, I know how to use AI, generative AI every day, and I'm getting the news, I'll be able to filter what's actually real and what's actually hype.
Yeah, actually, if I could layer on that too. So you're absolutely right. You have to understand the technology. And that, like, otherwise you'll be, sold a bag of goods, right? Because a lot of companies, maybe they product didn't really sell well, and then they changed their domain from .com to .ai. And now you're like, oh, tell me more, right? It's so like you really needed to provide value for your business. But to Mo's point, you have to understand it, play with it, and just try, for instance, anything you wanted to do. Like, hey, can you write a menu for my kid's birthday party, right? Add this prompt. Before you do, ask me any questions you have. That simple, just ask that. And then it's like, oh, how old is your kid? What do they like to eat? And they have like it would be like a banter. And now all of a sudden it's way better result, right? And there's all these prompts that are just phenomenal. Like you got to understand what it does, how it works, wrap your head around it. And then, ultimately a vet clinic is a small business, right? And so with any business, the game plan is increase revenue, decrease costs, right? And so is it a tool that's like on the marketing front going to bring in business for you and you're generating marketing content to bring in revenue, right? Is it where you're doing some upselling and cross-selling? So, everyone has systems and at 6 months, or 1 year, absolutely, the puppy's got to come in for its annual checkups, right? And making sure that you're automating that, you're following up on the phone with like AI to call them and say, that's an existing customer. They haven't come in for a year. That's a lost opportunity where you can do some of that. So that brings in revenue. But the place that I really get excited about is the decreased cost. So again, where are those humans doing those repetitive tasks? And as a small business owner, it's like I understand AI. I now see where I can reduce costs or increase revenue. And now I'm going to go proactively look for a tool that might be able to do that for me, as opposed to being like just sold something that looks cool and you're not really connecting the business use case of increased revenue, decreased costs, right? Basically save time or, increase my customer base and offerings.
Yeah, well, I just want to add, like, I think they have like a good example, like, of features that underutilized with AI that like related to also pets. So I have a dog, and I saw him scratching, and then I found something on his skin. I took it out, put it in the sink. So I took a picture. I didn't know what it is. Could be like fleas, could be other things. I took a picture of the thing, and I asked ChatGPT, "What is it?" And ChatGPT was able to like, "Oh, that's a fleas. This kind of fleas. Give me the information, like what to do." So I think like images and videos, feed it, like try to play with AI in different unconventional ways and see, like, you're gonna be surprised, like the things that it can do. Analyze report, like you get from the vet report, put it in ChatGPT and see what's the outcome could be. I think those are good use cases.
Yeah, these are all great. Kind of my last question, then I was going to maybe open it up for any last thoughts, any questions from the audience. What is the future? What's the near future and the long-term future of AI in human and veterinary medicine that you are kind of seeing? Adele, I know you're big in the veterinary space. Todd and Mo, y'all are bigger in the human space. If you could just, give us a little brief interview about a brief summary about what you're seeing coming now versus where you think that this is going to head in 20 years.
I can definitely shoot there. So we've talked about a couple types of AI today. Started out with narrow, then generative, agentic is another. Well, now the next category is actually robotic and movement. So the world is set up for humans, right? From doorknobs to all the medical, even counting those pills, right? It's human motions to count the pills, right? Well, in the next 10 years, you're going to see a lot, even if it's a set of arms on a table that's pulling out the pill bottles and manually doing it, all those motions that can literally just be recorded and then replayed. They now already have robotic arms that can do those sort of things. So AI, you're going to start to see it in physical form now too, which is super exciting. And then more, autonomous vehicles, for instance, whether it's Waymo out west, so you can hop in and there's no driver. That's AI running that car and making all those decisions, right? So you're going to start to see it physically as well.
If I can jump in, I think what AI is really, really good is finding patterns in data and related to pets, which they non-verbal creature. There's few scientists that are already training. There's like two interesting research. One is training on pet expression and understanding how they feel. I think that's something that could be really interesting, and I think probably going to be successful at some point to introduce that. Imagine video, this is my dog, and you kind of know like maybe like how we feeling. And then there's another group of scientists that trying to understand animal sounds and translate it to human voice. So they're doing this on whales, and they're trying to understand like basically animal language translation to human language, I think, which is really great for this field. And I totally agree with Todd. Robotics is going to be the next biggest phase, especially in medical surgery. Yeah. So and we only in the beginning. This is 1995 of the internet. And I think we're going to see, not in 20 years, I think in 10 years, we're going to see a very, very different world with AI here.
The other thing we didn't touch on is wearables for pets. Basically being able to monitor heart rates, respiratory rates, movement. There's also, some products that are going to come out that'll look at videos of your pets and look at whether or not they're lame or are doing something different so that, they can watch them when they're going outside, and then alert you that this animal looks different today. They look like they're limping on their left front foot, or, just gives us more information. But again, even with the wearables and these video options, veterinarians are still needed to evaluate these things, but those are pretty exciting as well.
Yeah, the video, Lisa and I heard about that one at a conference we were at last fall. It's also going to be great to analyze response to medication, response to treatment, right? Instead of the animal having to come back in or just relying on the humans, what they see, because a lot of times they don't understand really. So this actually will analyze before and after how the response to medication is. I think that's huge for us as far as like what, tailoring our treatment plans based on response to medications.
Yeah, what I kind of hope for the future is that we've got some great initiatives starting out now, but that we will get much more highly accurate initiatives, but also that things will be much more connected up. So we will have a much more holistic understanding of an animal's health status because of all the different ways of monitoring its health and its response to treatment and investigating the disease and engaging with the pet parent or the animal owner as well, because at the minute there's parts of the industry which are really disjointed. There's huge parts of the animal's life that we don't traditionally see in a veterinary clinic. At the minute, we just see them for when there's a problem, or for their annual vaccination. And so there's large parts of that animal's life that we're not involved in the process, and that's probably where things are getting missed. So my dream is that we'll be better connected to pets and their owners, and we will be able to pick up things earlier. We'll be able to prevent disease escalating, and we'll have healthier, happier animals for longer, and that would be great.
You know what the best one is? You're not gonna believe this, and when I heard it, I'm like, holy, that makes perfect sense. But the best one, we're gonna be able to talk to animals. So we're actually, because of the LLMs, and they'll have enough data of animals, right? And we're going to find that they're not going to sit down and, talk about, early philosophers with you, but you'll know, literally how they're saying, like, I'm hungry in the ornery way, or I'm hungry in the happy way, right? Like even those nuances. And the same way, now they have, like, you can talk in English, it'll translate it to Chinese, and your mobile app can listen in Chinese and translate it to English. Those are really good now. Same thing, it'll translate to your animal, and you'll literally be able to talk to animals. When I heard that, I'm like, that's amazing. I can't wait.
Oh my God, I can't
We're
wait.
all gonna work with small chip that translate everything, animal, human.
Right.
We're all gonna start understanding each other.
It'll just be right on your mobile phone. I mean, it's
Yeah,
just, and your mobile phone eventually will just be like a pin. It might be in your glasses. I think
Injection in
ultimately,
your ear, yeah.
unless they can figure out how to do a neural like implant
Yeah.
into the retina or whatever, like you're gonna have to have some sort of glasses because the
Glasses or
visual is a lot
earpiece.
and it gets to your ear too, right?
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
think glasses win out overall
Mhm.
versus holding a physical phone.
I love it. So everything's so exciting. It's like, I'm ready for the Star Trek, here's what's wrong with you. That's it. And I
Right.
think
Well, think about it. I
getting.
just I don't know if you can hear, but I'm getting over a little bronchitis. But I'm like an old school guy. I'm like, give me one of those mercury thermometers. I need to know what's going on. And but they only have the kind that now are like Bluetooth but it's like within 1 second it takes your temperature. Like that
Mhm.
was Star Trek.
Yep.
Where it comes up and it like just scans your body and it's like, okay, here's the things wrong. And then all of a sudden it fixes you too. Right. So it's like your thermometer now can like just get in there and do heart surgery.
Amazing. Amazing. Okay, so we have about 2 minutes left. Just maybe open it up for any last minute questions, any last minute thoughts. Daniel, I don't know if you want to close out here, maybe give us a peek or a hint at what Tailblazer is.
Oh, you remembered the name. I don't you just love that name, Tailblazers? Everyone, first off, thank you so much. I had to hold myself back from jumping in every second. Then eventually I just went to the chat and was typing away. Also, Sarah just said that this feels like a Black Mirror episode. I'm sorry. I hope it's not as scary. I hope the conversation at least isn't as scary. There are great things to look forward to in the future of AI. Yes, not scary, really cool. I mean, we touched on some of the most important and pressing priorities in the vet space when implementing AI, especially touching on some of the privacy policies that we should keep in mind as far as what it means to attach your name to differential diagnoses if you're not 100% sure that you were double checking on what you're comparing against. There's so many different avenues that I hope this would go down that it did. So thank you guys for making this a great conversation. I really hope we can do this again in some form or another soon. I hope the audience had a great time. Before we do a complete outro, I want to be respectful of everyone's time, but if there's any other questions before we head off, everyone don't be shy. And if not, I'll give a quick explanation of Tailblazer. It's going to be an online web portal that uses AI to help with some of the most time-sucking administrative tasks in the clinic, especially keeping in mind the fact that as of last year, 48% of veterinarians.
Yo, someone.
Yeah. What was that? Was that for us? Oh, I don't want to miss that. But yeah, so that's the basic idea of it without getting too into the weeds, but we can talk about that another time if you guys want. Let me put in my LinkedIn, and then if anyone else wants to put in their LinkedIn to kind of just keep us all connected here beyond this room. I'm sure we would all love to do that. So that's me on LinkedIn. I encourage you to find all of our guests there too. And again, thank you so much for joining. We truly appreciate it. We'll be sending out. There we go. We got some LinkedIns in the chat. Okay. Hoping we can continue this conversation again soon. Oh, and Katie accidentally left. So let's bring back in Katie. I think. Oh, wait. No, that's a different Katie. What am I thinking? Hi, real Katie, and hi, other
No worries.
Katie.
I'm here.
Sorry,
I
guys.
think Todd had to leave.
Yeah. So anywho, we're going to be sending some notes to everyone at the conclusion of this. We'll send some highlights. We're going to do a restream of this to YouTube. Look out for some clips of this as well. And thank you again for joining, everyone. We do this every month, but it's never been this cool. So here's our peak. But I hope it's all up from here. Check out your vet box when it comes out. Here, I'm gonna put in the chat the links to MindGrub and your vet box's websites, just because they're going to be two different places you want to check out for updates in the coming months. And thank you again, everyone, for joining. I truly appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel.
Have
for
a great day.
Thank you, everyone. All right. Have a
you.
good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.